The glass sat in front of me, cold, glistening, innocent yet suddenly terrifying. Moments earlier, I had been laughing, distracted by the chatter around me, when the waitress slid the drink onto my table with a faint smile. But then, her hand brushed mine and left behind something far more chilling than the drink itself, a folded napkin, trembling slightly in her grip. I thought it was maybe a bill or a phone number, but when I unfolded it, the words hit me like a punch to the chest. "I just saw my sister put something into your drink." My heart stopped. My eyes darted to the glass again, its surface reflecting the dim lights of the restaurant. What was in it? Poison? Pills? Something that would knock me out. I scanned the room, suddenly paranoid, every face looking suspicious. Then my eyes found hers, the girl across the table who I thought I could trust, who had been smiling at me all evening, the same smile that now seemed almost sinister. The waitress passed by again, pretending to take another order, but her eyes met mine for just a second. Urgent? Warning! I felt my throat tighten. My instincts screamed at me to stand, to shout, to run, but fear pinned me to the chair. What would happen if I confronted her? What would happen if I didn't? In that moment, I realized I was no longer just on a simple night out. I was trapped in a silent game where one wrong move could cost me everything. And as my fingers shook against the table, I knew I had only one chance to make the right choice before it was too late. The night started out so normal that I never could have guessed how it would end. It was a Friday evening, and the city carried that familiar hum of excitement that only comes when the week is finally over. Restaurants were filled, streets alive with chatter, and every bar seemed to spill out laughter and music. I had been looking forward to this dinner all week, an escape from my routine, a chance to relax, to eat something good, and enjoy some company that, at the time, I thought I could trust. The small Italian restaurant I chose wasn't fancy, but it had that cozy charm I liked. Warm lighting glowed softly against brick walls, the air was rich with garlic and herbs, and the low murmur of voices felt comforting, almost like background music. I arrived early and chose a table by the window, watching people walk past in the cooling night air. My nerves hummed with anticipation, though I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just because I hadn't been on a proper evening out in a while. I ordered water while I waited, checking my phone, fiddling with the napkin, glancing at the door each time it opened. Finally, she arrived, the girl I was meeting, the one who had caught my interest in ways I hadn't admitted even to myself yet. She looked effortlessly put together, smiling as she walked over, her presence instantly filling the space. We ordered food quickly, joking about the menu, and conversation flowed icily enough. She had that kind of charm that kept my attention on her, leaning in slightly, laughing at just the right moments. For a while, everything felt perfect. The restaurant seemed alive with warmth and sound, yet at our table it was like a little bubble of comfort where the outside world didn't matter. When the waitress brought our drinks, I barely noticed. I was too caught up in the words spilling between us, the small touches of her hand against the table, the sparkle in her eyes. But then, something small and strange happened, something that at first didn't even register. As the waitress placed my glass down, she slipped something under my fingers. It was so subtle, I almost thought I imagined it. My first instinct was that it was the bill, though that made no sense since we hadn't even eaten yet. I looked down, puzzled, and saw the corner of a folded napkin. I picked it up casually, hiding the movement so the girl across from me wouldn't notice. The note was short, rushed, almost shaky. Only a single sentence, but it froze me where I sat. I just saw my sister put something into your drink. For a second, my brain refused to believe what I was seeing. My stomach dropped, my pulse thundered in my ears, and the restaurant's warm glow suddenly felt suffocating. My first instinct was to glance at the glass. It sat there, condensation dripping slowly down the side, completely ordinary, completely harmless to anyone else. But now, it felt like a loaded weapon placed in front of me. My eyes darted back to the girl sitting across from me. She was still talking, still smiling, completely at ease, as though nothing at all had happened. But those words on the napkin echoed through my head like a siren. Sister. The waitress was her sister. That meant the girl sitting across from Mitha one I had trusted enough to come here with was the one who had done it. My chest tightened, every instinct in me screaming to get up and leave, but my body wouldn't move. I forced a smile, nodding at whatever she was saying, trying not to let my panic show. The waitress passed by again, her tray balanced on one hand, her other brushing against the tables she passed. For a brief moment, her eyes met mine, and I saw something there: fear, urgency, a silent plea for me to understand. She hadn't been mistaken. She was trying to save me. I slipped the note into my pocket and rested my hand over it. The paper, trembling slightly with the shake of my fingers. My thoughts raced. What had she put in my drink? Was it poison? Some drug to knock me out? My imagination ran wild, conjuring every horror story I had ever heard. The worst part was not knowing. The drink sat there, innocent, yet sinister, and I felt the weight of it like it was daring me to touch it. I tried to keep the conversation going, forcing laughter, but my voice sounded strange even to me. Every second felt like an eternity. The restaurant suddenly transformed into a stage where I had to play a role convincingly, or risk everything. I wanted to confront her right there, demand an explanation, but I couldn't. What if she denied it? What if she caused a scene? What if I was wrong, though? Deep down, I knew I wasn't. My best chance was to act as though nothing was wrong until I figured out what to do. My hand stayed far from the glass. I pretended to take sips, raising it slightly, tilting it toward my lips, but never letting it touch me. Each time, my stomach churned with dread at the thought of what might happen if I slipped up. Minutes dragged on, and I found myself hyper-aware of everything: the clink of silverware, the bursts of laughter from nearby tables, the faint sound of music playing from the kitchen. Yet none of it felt real anymore. The world had narrowed down to two people: the smiling girl across from me and her sister, the waitress, moving quickly between tables, sneaking glances at me when she could. The air grew heavier, the warmth suffocating, and I felt trapped in a situation that had no safe exit. When she excused herself to take a phone call, relief washed over me, though it was thin and fragile. I sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched glass, my thoughts spiraling. I could leave right now, just stand up and walk away. But part of me needed to know the truth. Why had she done it? What was in the drink? And most importantly, what would have happened to me if the waitress hadn't warned me? I knew one thing for certain. My night had just taken a terrifying turn, and whatever came next would change everything. I waited for her to disappear completely before I moved, my pulse hammering in my throat as though it might give me away if anyone was listening. The moment she slipped out the front door with her phone pressed to her ear, I exhaled shakily, clutching the note in my pocket as if it were the only anchor keeping me steady. My eyes scanned the restaurant until I found the waitress again. She was busy stacking plates from a nearby table, her movements quick and precise, but there was a tension in her shoulders that gave her away. I rose slowly, careful not to draw attention, and walked toward the bathroom at the back, slipping through the narrow corridor past the kitchen doors. My hands were damp, my throat dry, and for a moment I almost turned back, but then I caught sight of her following me. She glanced around nervously before stepping into the hall where the hum of the restaurant dulled to a muffled buzz behind. U.S. You saw it, right? She whispered urgently, her eyes wide and pleading. I nodded, pulling the napkin from my pocket and showing her I still had it. Relief flickered across her face, but it didn't last long. Fear quickly replaced it. She's my sister, she said in a low voice, but I swear to you, I didn't know she was going to do that. I just saw her pour something from a small packet into your glass when you were looking at me. I couldn't stay quiet. Her words sent a shiver down my spine, the reality of it crashing into me harder than before. What was it? I asked, my voice trembling more than I wanted it to. She shook her head quickly. I don't know, but it wasn't sugar, and it wasn't anything innocent. Please, don't drink it. I nodded, though I hadn't intended to touch the glass again. Not after reading her note. My thoughts raced. Why? Would her sister, the girl I thought I was getting to know, do something like that to me? Was it planned? Was I just another victim in some scheme? I pressed for answers, but the waitress only shook her head. I don't know her reasons, she whispered, but I know her, and when she hides something in her hand like that, it's never good. She looked torn, as though speaking against her sister cost her something, but there was honesty in her eyes that I couldn't ignore. I thanked her, my voice low, and promised her I wouldn't mention her name if I confronted her sister. She nodded quickly, biting her lip before hurrying back toward the dining area. I lingered in the corridor a moment longer, trying to steady myself. My reflection in the bathroom mirror startled me, my face pale, my eyes wide and bloodshot, sweat clinging to my brow. I splashed water on my face and whispered to myself to stay calm, but the truth was nothing about this felt calm anymore. Every nerve in my body screamed danger. When I returned to the table, she was already back, her phone tucked away, smiling as though nothing had happened. She tilted her head curiously. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice light, almost playful. I forced a nod, easing back into my seat, while carefully avoiding the glass that still sat between us like a silent threat. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. Just needed to step away for a second. She studied me for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly as though she sensed something was off. Then she smiled again and went on talking about her day, about her plans for the weekend, about nothing and everything. But now every word she spoke felt heavy with hidden meaning, every gesture laced with suspicion. I couldn't stop seeing her through the lens of the note, through her sister's frightened warning. The food arrived, steaming and fragrant, but I barely tasted it. My mind kept circling back to the question I couldn't shake. What would she have done if I had taken that first sip? Would I already be unconscious? Would I have woken up in some strange place? Robbed, hurt, or maybe not woken up at all? My stomach turned at the thought. I pushed the plate around, forcing myself to eat a little, to avoid suspicion, but I kept my hands far from the drink. I tried to act normal, nodding, laughing in the right places, but my thoughts were miles away, calculating every possible move. Should I confront her right there in the restaurant? Should I wait until we left? Should I just walk out and never look back? None of the options felt safe, and the longer I sat across from her, the more trapped I felt. At one point, her eyes flicked to my glass, and she asked lightly, "Not thirsty?" My chest tightened. I forced a smile. "I'll probably drink it in a bit. Just not that hungry right now." Her smile lingered a second too long, like she was studying my reaction. Then she shrugged and continued eating. But I noticed how often her gaze returned to the glass, almost expectant, like she was waiting for me to finally lift it to my lips. Each time, I felt the weight of the choice pressing down harder. By the time we finished dinner, my nerves were frayed to the point of snapping. I excused myself one more time, slipping to the back again, and caught the waitress near the counter. "Can you take the drink away?" I asked quietly. I don't want her to notice, but I need it gone. Her eyes widened, then she nodded quickly. "Leave it to me," she whispered. I returned to the table, and moments later, she came by with a tray, pretending to clear space. She lifted the glass smoothly, offering a polite smile, and carried it away as though it were just another empty. Relief washed over me, though only slightly. The danger wasn't gone out with her sitting across from me, watching me with that same gentle smile that now felt like a mask. We paid the bill and stepped outside into the night air. Cooler now, the city buzzing around us with the sounds of cars and late-night crowds. She slipped her arm through mine casually, her warmth pressing against me as if nothing in the world were wrong. I forced myself to walk, my mind racing with everything I'd learned, every warning, every unanswered question. I knew one thing, with absolute certainty. Whatever game I had just been dragged into, it wasn't over. In fact, it felt like it had only just begun. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that felt like I hadn't slept at all, though I had been in bed for hours. My mind never stopped racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that glass, the condensation sliding down its side, the clear liquid inside, looking so harmless yet holding something dark and dangerous. I saw her smile too, the way she leaned forward across the table, her voice soft and sweet, her eyes watching me with that subtle expectation, as if waiting for me to finally take the sip that would change everything. I got up, showered, made coffee I didn't drink, and sat staring at my phone on the kitchen counter. The waitress had promised she'd handle it, that the drink would be tested, but I had no idea if she actually could or if she was just trying to reassure me in the momento. I kept glancing at my phone, willing it to ring, torn between wanting the truth and fearing it. When it finally buzzed near Nguyen, I nearly jumped out of my chair. Her voice was hushed when I answered, urgent but steady. I couldn't say much. Last night, she whispered quickly, but I took your drink straight to someone I know. He ran a test. It had a sedative in it strong. If you had drunk more than a sip, you would have been unconscious in minutes. My blood ran cold, my grip on the phone tightening. My mind raced with what that meant. Unconscious in minutes. Where would I have woken up? Would I have woken up at all? 1,000 horrifying possibilities stormed through me, and the room felt like it tilted. Are you sure? I whispered back, though I already knew the answer. Yes, she said firmly. I wouldn't lie about this. I don't know what her plan was, but it wasn't good. You need to be careful. Her words echoed in my skull, each one heavier than the last. Careful! How could I be careful when the person I had been closest to last night had been the very danger itself? I hung up, pacing my apartment, my thoughts twisting into knots. Part of me wanted to call her right away, to scream, to demand answers, to hear her admit why she had done it. But another part of me, quieter, more cautious, told me to wait, to think. If she had been willing to drug me, what else was she capable of? I didn't know if she had been acting alone or if someone else was involved. I didn't know if she'd try again. The betrayal stung deeper than I could admit, because I had trusted her. Maybe too quickly, maybe too easily, but I had, and now that trust was shattered, replaced with suspicion and fear that dug into my chest like claws. By evening, my phone buzzed again, this time with her name flashing across the screen. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. For a long second, I almost let it ring out. But then, some reckless part of me hit. Except her voice was light, cheerful. Hey, I had such a great time last night. We should do it again soon. The ease in her tone was unsettling, as if nothing at all had happened. As if she hadn't tried to put me under with whatever she had slipped into that drink. I swallowed hard, forcing calm into my voice. Yeah, it was interesting, I said. Silence followed. A brief pause where I thought I heard the slightest shift in her breathing. Interesting, she repeated softly, her tone laced with curiosity. I knew she was listening closely, trying to read between my words. My fingers tightened around the phone. Yeah, I said, forcing a chuckle. We'll talk about it later. I ended the call quickly, my heart pounding, realizing I wasn't ready yet. I needed more answers, more certainty, more strength before I faced her directly. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't relax, couldn't think of anything but the inevitable confrontation. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining how it might play out. I would look her in the eyes and ask why. I would hold her accountable for what she had done. But would she admit it? Or would she smile again, deny everything, and try to twist it back on me? The uncertainty gnawed at me until sleep finally dragged me under, restless and broken. 2 days later, I asked her to meet me at a quiet coffee shop, far from the restaurant, far from familiar places. I needed somewhere public, but not crowded. Somewhere I could control the space. When she walked in, she looked the same as always, composed, graceful, carrying herself with that charm that had once drawn me in. She smiled warmly, sliding into the chair across from me, her hands folding neatly on the table. I was starting to think you were avoiding me, she said lightly. My stomach churned. Maybe I was, I answered, keeping my tone flat. Her eyebrows arched slightly, but her smile never wavered. We ordered drinks, though mine sat untouched, the irony not lost on me. For a few minutes, we danced around small talk, but the weight between us grew heavier until I couldn't hold it in any longer. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What did you put in my drink the other night? Her smile froze, just for a second, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes before she masked it again. What are you talking about? She asked, her tone sweet, almost confused. Don't play dumb, I said firmly, my voice steadier now. I know what you did. Your sister saw you, she warned me, and the drink was tested. It had a sedative in it. The mask slipped further, her smile tightening, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. For a moment, I thought she might deny it outright, but then she exhaled softly, leaning back in her chair. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, finally, her voice quieter now, stripped of its playful tone. It was just supposed to make you relax. That's all. Anger flared hot in my chest. Relax? You wanted me unconscious? She looked down, her jaw tightening, then back up, at me with eyes that now seemed colder, sharper. I needed money, she admitted flatly. That's all it was. Nothing personal. I wasn't going to let anything worse happen. I just wanted your wallet, maybe your phone. That's it. Her words hit me like a punch, not because of what she planned, but because of how casually she said it, like drugging me was just another choice, another little thing she had to do to get what she wanted. The betrayal deepened in that moment, cutting through whatever remained of the connection I thought we had. I stared at her, my voice low and steady. You were ready to risk my life for that? She looked away, her silence answering more than words ever could. I stood then, the chair scraping against the floor. My decision made. We're done, I said sharply, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Her eyes followed me as I walked out, and though I didn't look back, I felt her gaze burning into me, colder than ever. The air outside was sharp, almost cleansing, and for the first time since that night, I felt like I had finally taken a step out of her shadow. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over, not really, because someone who could smile at me while slipping poison into my drink was someone who could come back. Someone who might not let go so easily. In the days that followed our confrontation at the coffee shop, I tried convincing myself that it was over, that her confession and my decision to walk away had closed the door for good. I told myself she would move on, that someone who admitted so casually to plotting against me must have countless other marks lined up, countless other plans already in motion. I wanted to believe I had been nothing more than a fleeting target, a momentary opportunity she could easily replace. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the night, when the city outside my window grew still, I knew better. People like her didn't let go, not when they had been exposed, not when someone had gotten close enough to see through the mask. And I had seen through it. The first sign came on the third night, subtle but unmistakable. My phone buzzed at midnight, and when I checked, it was a message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have walked away. No name, no context. But I knew. My stomach dropped, and I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I told myself it could be anyone. But denial only worked for a moment before reality cut through. It was her. I didn't respond, hoping silence would end it. But silence only seemed to provoke her. The next day, another message. You think you're safe? You're not. You owe me. The words were colder this time, sharper, carrying a weight that pressed on my chest long after I put the phone down. I considered blocking the number, but fear rooted me to inaction. What if she found another way to reach me? What if she was already watching? That thought became an obsession, haunting me every time I stepped outside. Walking to the corner store, I caught myself glancing over my shoulder, scanning every passing face for hers. The paranoia was exhausting, but it wasn't unfounded. On the fifth day, I saw horror at least. I thought I did. Across the streets, leaning against a lamppost, a figure stood in the shadow, her posture too familiar to mistake. My heart jolted, and I froze But when a car passed and I looked again, the space was empty, as though she had dissolved into the night. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks on me, fueled by sleepless nights and too much fear. Yet when I got home, I found an envelope tucked under my door. Inside was a single Polaroid picture me, sitting at the coffee shop, staring out the window with a distant look. The picture had been taken without my knowledge, from an angle I couldn't trace. My blood ran cold. She wasn't gone. She was watching. I thought about going to the police, about telling them everything. The note, the drink, the confession, the threats, but what did I really have? A napkin with scribbled words? A drink I no longer possessed? A conversation in a coffee shop with no recording and text messages from a blocked number. To them, it would look like paranoia, like a story too flimsy to pursue. And even if they believed me, how long would it take before she slipped away into the cracks of the city, only to reappear later, angrier and more dangerous? The law moved slowly, but she didn't. I was trapped in the space between fear and uncertainty, forced to live each day as if walking a tightrope where one misstep would bring her crashing down on me. Nights grew worse. I woke to sounds that weren't there, shadows that seemed to linger longer than they should. Once, I swore I heard footsteps outside my apartment door, light and deliberate. Pausing as if listening, I sat in silence, my heart thundering, clutching a kitchen knife in trembling hands until dawn finally broke through the blinds. Each morning, exhaustion pulled at me, but I carried on, moving through the motions of work and routine, pretending everything was fine while knowing it wasn't. My world had shrunk into a cage of suspicion, and she was holding the key. Then came the call. Not a text this time, but a voicer, smooth, calm, as though we had never had that confrontation. "You embarrassed me," she said softly, almost sweetly. "You made me look weak." That was a mistake. My throat tightened, my voice barely more than a whisper as I demanded she'd leave me alone. She only laughed, a low, chilling sound that crawled under my skin. "You don't get to tell me what to do," she said. "You should have just drunk the glass. It would have been easier for both of us." The line went dead before I could answer, leaving me in silence so heavy it felt like the walls were closing in. That night, I double-locked every window and door. But sleep was impossible. I sat in the dark with every light off, listening for sounds, waiting for something I couldn't name. Hours dragged on until, around 3 in the morning, I heard Ita faint scrape at the window, deliberate and slow. My breath caught, and I froze in the chair, my grip tightening around the knife I had kept by my side. The sound lasted only a few seconds before fading, but it was enough. I knew she was there, testing the edges of my safety, reminding me that walls and locks were nothing but thin barriers she could breach whenever she chose. By dawn, my decision was clear. I couldn't sit still anymore. Couldn't wait for her next move like prey frozen in place. If she wanted to haunt me, if she wanted to stalk me into submission, I needed to turn the game around. I needed to know who she really was, what she was capable of, and how far she was willing to go, because only then would I stand a chance of stopping her. The waitress had saved me once with a note slipped under my hand, but this time, I had to save myself. And as I looked in the mirror that morning, my face drawn and pale, my eyes hollowed from sleepless nights, I realized something frightening. She had already changed me. Whatever happened next, I wasn't the same person who had sat down at that restaurant, smiling at a girl across the table, thinking it was just another normal night. That version of me was gone. What remained was someone caught in a dangerous game. One I hadn't chosen, but one I could no longer avoid. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of her hunt. I knew I couldn't keep living in the constant grip of fear, flinching at every sound, second-guessing every shadow, waiting for her to make the next move. The threat had wrapped itself around my life like chains, dragging me into sleepless nights and restless days. And I realized the only way to break free was to face her head-on. The thought terrified me, but the alternative, living forever under the weight of her presence, terrified me more. I began by gathering what I had. Every shred of proof, no matter how small. The napkin the waitress had written, the text messages with their veiled threats, the photo she had slipped under my door, and my call history that proved she had reached out. Alone? None of it felt like much, but together it painted a picture of something undeniable. I knew the police might still dismiss it as personal drama or paranoia, but I was past caring. I needed it recorded somewhere official. Needed someone else to know the danger, even if they didn't act right away. I filed the report, my hands trembling as I slid the evidence across the desk, my voice low but steady as I told the officer everything, from the drink to the confrontation to the night-phone calls. His expression was skeptical at first, but when I showed him the photograph, the image of me, taken without my knowledge, his eyes hardened, and I knew at least some part of him believed me. He promised to investigate, but warned me not to. Expect quick results. That same night, after leaving the station, I felt both lighter and heavier at once. Lighter, because I had spoken the truth aloud. Heavier, because I knew she would eventually learn what I had done, and that knowledge might push her into a corner where she became even more dangerous. I went home, checked every lock twice, and sat in the quiet, waiting. Hours dragged on until the silence itself felt deafening. my nerves raw from anticipation. Then, around midnight, the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the door, slow, deliberate, echoing through the apartment. My stomach clenched, every instinct screaming not to open it, but I forced myself forward, gripping the knife I had kept nearby. "Who is it?" I called, my voice steadier than I expected. Silence. I waited, heart pounding, then heard a whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. "You can't hide from me." The words slithered through the crack of the door, cold and taunting, and then came the sound of retreating footsteps fading into the hall. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, until the silence returned. I didn't sleep at all, and by dawn, I had made my decision. I called the waitress the only ally I had in this mess and asked to meet. We sat in the same quiet coffee shop where the truth had first spilled out, her face pale and anxious as she listened. I told her everything about the photo, the messages, the knock at the door. She nodded grimly, saying she wasn't surprised. "She's always been like that," she whispered. "Charming, but dangerous. I've covered for her more times than I can count. But this is worse than anything she's ever done." She hesitated, then leaned closer. "If she knows the police are involved, she won't stop. She'll try to scare you into silence. Or worse." Her words confirmed what I already knew deep down. This wouldn't end unless I ended it myself, not with violence, but with truth complete, undeniable, unshakable truth that would strip away her ability to hide behind her charm. That evening, I arranged a meeting with her. I chose a busy public park, where families walked and joggers passed, where her mask would be harder to maintain but her temper would still slip if pushed. When she arrived, she looked as polished as ever, smiling as though nothing had passed between us, but her eyes betrayed a storm brewing beneath the surface. "So dramatic," she said lightly as she sat on the bench beside me, "calling me out here like this. What do you want?" I met her gaze, steady now, no longer the fearful prey she had stalked in the shadows. "I went to the police," I said plainly. Her smile faltered, the mask cracking. "You did what?" she hissed. "I told them everything. The drink, the threats, the photo. They know it all." For a moment, her composure shattered entirely, her face twisting with anger. She leaned closer, her voice sharp as glass. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said, keeping my tone calm, steady. "I've made sure you can't hurt me anymore. Or anyone else?" Her eyes darted around, scanning the people nearby, and for the first time, I saw her cornered, her power slipping. She tried to laugh it off, tried to lean back with that same ease she always wore, but it rang hollow. "They won't believe you," she said finally, but there was doubt in her voice now. "They will," I replied, "because I have proof, because your sister knows the truth, and because you've left too many." Her jaw tightened, and she looked at me with pure hatred, her smile gone, her charm stripped away to reveal the predator beneath. "This isn't over," she whispered, but even as she said it, I saw her defeat in the way her shoulders sagged, the way her eyes flickered with uncertainty. She stood abruptly and walked away, her pace quick, her figure swallowed by the crowd, until she disappeared from sight. I sat there for a long time after, the tension draining from my body, leaving me exhausted but strangely free. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe without the weight of her shadow pressing on my chest. I knew the battle wasn't entirely over, the investigation would take time. And she might try again, but I had turned the tide. I had taken back control of my story. Weeks passed, and the silence stretched on. No more messages, no more knocks, no more photos slipped under my door. Slowly, life began to return to normal. I started sleeping through the night again. Walking outside without glancing over my shoulder every few steps. The memory of her lingered, sharp and dark, but it no longer held me captive. Trust didn't come easily anymore, and maybe it never will. But in its place grew something stronger. Awareness, resilience, the knowledge that I had faced fear and survived. Sometimes, when I sit by my window at night, I still think about that. Drink the glass that looked so harmless, the choice that could have changed everything. I think about the waitress, the stranger who saved me with a trembling note slipped under my hand, and I think about her, the girl with the charming smile and the cold eyes, wondering where she is now, whether she's found someone else too. Target. Whether the truth finally caught up with her, I may never know. But one thing is certain. I'll never forget the night I almost lifted that glass, and the way one warning saved my life. And though the fear has faded, the lesson remains, etched into me forever. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes, it looks like someone sitting across the table, smiling, waiting for you to take a sip. If you enjoyed this twisted tale, don't forget to like, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Twisted Fate Chronicle for more spine-chilling stories that keep you on edge.